The longbow had an all-consuming aura, and even though Zayn was merely walking toward it, he still felt like he was melting. His temperature rose to new heights, his blood felt like it was boiling, and the vital energy in his body almost evaporated completely. Suddenly, a fierce gust of wind swept out from the longbow and pushed him back a few feet. He thought,
"It really doesn't want me anywhere near it."
He strained his eyes to get a better look at the bow. A frown creased his forehead as something occurred to him, and then his heart began to pound. Alongside the weapon, a golden book of cultivation techniques floated in the air, shining with a bright red light. There was also something written on the stone tablet beneath his feet. It read,
"The divine art of the Great One, a martial arts technique cultivated by the true God. The Great One was an incredibly skilled archer and never missed a shot. He once used the divine art of the Great One to kill the golden crows above the heavens and then refined them into the 9 genuine flames, allowing him to kill his targets from thousands of yards away. The divine bow is 5 feet tall and weighs over 260 pounds. Crafted from the bones of the golden crows, it is a naturally lethal weapon. The bow is wrapped in the 9 genuine flames and is capable of burning everything in its path."
After reading the inscription, Zayn stumbled back in surprise.
"The divine art of the Great One? Seriously?"
He trembled with excitement, and his gaze once again fell upon the gleaming book next to the longbow. He had heard stories about the Great One ever since he was a young boy. Legend had it that in ancient times, the god had once killed 9 of the 10 golden crows to save all living things. At that moment, Zayn realized something. If the Great One really had used the divine bow to kill the golden crows, it must be more than just a genuine energy artifact.
"It has to be divine in nature."
He slowly approached the bow again, but a flame leaped out and burned him before he could get close. Instinctively, he jumped back a few steps and frowned. He thought,
"I might not be able to wield the divine bow right now, but will I be able to try again when I reach the foundation level? Or maybe after I've cultivated the divine art of the Great One?"
As he mulled over the answer to his question, he was once again drawn to the book that detailed the divine art of the Great One. A misty, golden wave of energy encircled it, undulating like a wave. He decided to reach out and touch the book, but a layer of transparent energy seemed to stop him before he could make contact. He stubbornly tried again to grab it, but red flames immediately burst forth. When he finally managed to clasp the book's spine between his fingertips, the fiery onslaught burned itself out, leaving him both puzzled and elated. He impatiently opened the book and scanned the sentences written on the first page. It read,
"I was born human. When subjected to the will of the divine, I was under the protection of the true God. To understand and practice the divine art, you must first cultivate the true eye."
As Zayn's heart rate began to return to normal, he felt the contents of the book drawing him in. After what felt like years, he eventually turned over the last page of the tome and let out a huge sigh of relief. Then he turned his attention back to the divine bow that was still floating in the air. Remembering something he had read earlier, he flicked back to a particular section of the book and moved his finger over a particular paragraph. It read,
"To master the divine art of the Great One, the first thing one needs to cultivate is the true eye in order to see what is thousands of miles away. From then on, one will be able to see a fly buzzing around from miles away and even ascertain its gender. However, cultivating the true eye requires the spiritual liquid from the blood herb to cleanse one's eyes."
Zayn frowned. He had never heard of the blood herb before, so it was bound to be difficult to find. Based on what he could gather from the book, it seemed to be a precious herb that had existed in ancient times. Tens of thousands of years had passed since then, meaning it might be from a plant that had since become extinct. That thought tempered Zayn's excitement, and he snapped the book shut in frustration.
"I need to forget about this for now. I should be concentrating all my energy on passing the test to get into the sect."
With that in mind, he sat on the ground and took out a golden essence pill. Its strong medicinal scent filled the wisdom chamber before he even had the chance to swallow it. When he placed it in his mouth, the pill melted on his tongue, and a warm current flowed into his energy center. The 7th stage of body tempering was also known as the first stage of cleansing. When a cultivator reached that stage, they were able to thoroughly wash and cleanse their body of any impurities. After doing it 3 times, the vital energy in their body would become incredibly pure, making it suitable for condensing seeds of vital energy. But for some reason, Zayn had already managed to successfully condense one when he was only at the 6th stage of body tempering. As he concentrated, the vital energy in his energy center began to evaporate and turn into wisps of mist that flowed into his internal organs. It was as if his vital energy had turned into a sponge that was cleaning his entire body, both inside and out. A fine black dust flowed into his bloodstream and was expelled through his breath. 5 days later, Zayn opened his eyes and felt elated. His body was much lighter, and he felt a lot more comfortable in his own skin than he had before he had started the cleansing process.
I didn't think a golden essence pill would allow me to reach the peak of the 7th stage of body tempering in less than a week. Even the seed of vital energy has grown quite a bit. This is incredible. If the herbs used in golden essence pills weren't so rare, I could have refined even more of them and kept them for myself.
He ruefully shook his head and returned his focus to the matter at hand. He thought,
I'm ready to take the test now. I'll ensure I succeed and secure my entry into the sect.
He jumped up and quickly vacated the dragon prison. A moment later, he reappeared in the narrow room he had been assigned 5 days ago. When he pushed open the door, he could see hundreds of people hurrying down the corridors with either excited or hesitant expressions as they headed toward the mountain gate. Zayn quickly followed suit and blended into the crowd. The accommodation arranged by the Hall of Foreign Affairs was at the foot of Burial Mountain, and a long flight of stairs led up to the main gate, where hundreds of hopefuls had already congregated to take part in the test. A handsome young man in a golden robe stood in front of Zayn. He appeared to be a little disappointed as he looked at the people who were milling around, and it seemed he was searching for someone. When he turned around and saw Zayn, he quickly reached out to shake his hand.
Hello, my name is Barnabas, and my family sent me here from Meadow City to take the test. It looks like you're all alone, just like I am. Everyone else seems to be here with friends, family, or elders. Why don't we stick together and look out for one another?
For a moment, Zayn simply stared at him, not sure what to make of the suggestion. Zayn was taken aback by how forward Barnabas was. He had been minding his own business, and then suddenly, the young man had offered to join forces with him during the test. When Barnabas saw him frown, his smile faded away, and he turned bright red with embarrassment.
I'm so sorry. My family always says I ramble when I'm nervous. If you want, I'll leave you alone, and we can pretend this conversation never happened.
Just as he was about to scuttle away, Zayn smiled warmly at him.
It's fine. I was just a little taken aback, that's all. My name's Zayn, and I'm from Kintyre County. I'd be delighted if you had my back from now on.
Barnabas's broad grin resurfaced, and he proudly patted his chest.
You can trust me. Let's tackle this together. Ask me anything you want.
Zayn was touched by his offer. He knew that the Five Spirits Sect was a sacred place for martial artists to cultivate their skills, but aside from that, he was virtually clueless.
Do you know what the test is about?
Don't you already know? Then again, I guess you probably wouldn't if you're from Kintyre County.
What do you mean?
There's something you're probably not aware of. The Five Spirits Sect usually recruits people from big counties or from Taryn City itself. Kintyre County isn't exactly on their radar.
Zayn nodded. His home county was only a tiny backwater within the Yarrow Kingdom, so it made sense that the sect would gloss over it when looking for new recruits. Zayn and Barnabas continued to chat as they followed the large crowd, and Zayn soon realized that Barnabas was the type of man who wore his heart on his sleeve and couldn't keep anything to himself. The forthright young man told Zayn everything he knew about the previous tests. To join the sect, hopefuls would have to endure 4 trials. The first would test their physical fitness and strength. The second trial was perhaps the most important one, and it determined if a participant possessed a spirit body. Talent was always more valuable than status to the sect. No matter how noble someone was, they wouldn't even be allowed to step through the gates if they were lacking in ability. The third and fourth tests remained mysteries to Barnabas. Soon, they stopped in the middle of a vast expanse of land. All around them, potential recruits, numbering in the thousands, were standing by themselves or in small groups. Some had eager looks on their faces, while others were pacing back and forth to calm their nerves. Noisy chatter filled the air, along with laughter and even the odd raised voice. The hopefuls were dressed in all manner of different clothing, making it easy to distinguish the foreigners from the citizens of the Yarrow Kingdom. Middle-aged men at the first or second stage of the foundation level, mixed with teens who had reached the sixth stage of body tempering. Some had been born into noble families, but most of the participants were from ordinary backgrounds, like Zayn and Barnabas. Zayn watched the scene play out before him, and his initial uneasiness once again bubbled to the surface. When he looked up, he spotted a giant eagle sparrow flying above the complex, emitting a terrifying aura that signified the completion of the second stage of the foundation level. As the creature descended, its colossal wings stirred up a whirlwind of dust in its wake. Down on the ground, everyone was forced to cover their eyes. But Zayn managed to peek through the gaps in his fingers to see two people atop the magnificent creature. He was truly shocked that someone would be able to tame a foundation-level beast and make it their mount. Regardless of their cultivation skills, he knew they had to be from an extraordinary family, as that wasn't something that ordinary people could hope to achieve. When the bird landed, its two passengers jumped down to the ground. One of them was an impressively strong man with bulging muscles. His gray hair signaled that he was a little older, but his gaze was sharp, and he had not yet lost the majesty of his youth. Standing next to him was a beautiful young woman with long, flowing hair that framed her delicate facial features. When she smiled, she immediately drew everyone's attention, and the crowd began to openly gossip about her identity.
Long time no see. Jared, what are you doing here?
He walked over to greet them, followed by a younger man who couldn't take his eyes off the young woman.
Why shouldn't I be here? If your family can bring disciples here, then why can't the divination pavilion?
He clearly didn't want to speak to the man who had greeted him, but that didn't stop the man from turning to the young woman.
You must be Elena. You're as beautiful as the rumors suggest.
Yeah, that's my name. It's nice to meet you, sir.
As a member of the divination pavilion, she spoke with a commanding but melodious voice that had the power to send people into a trance. Straight away, her young male admirer gulped nervously and then took a step toward her.
I'm Kurt Colby. I hope we'll have plenty of time to get to know each other. If you need anything, I'll be happy to oblige.
Elena wasn't the slightest bit interested in him, so she turned her head to sweep her gaze over the crowd, pausing when she caught sight of Zayn. When Zayn noticed, he glanced at Barnabas and frowned.
What in the world is the divination pavilion? And who the hell is Kurt Colby?
Don't you know about the divination pavilion?
Should I have heard of it? Is it significant or something?
Barnabas couldn't believe Zayn's ignorance.
The divination pavilion is a huge faction in the Yarrow Kingdom. Its leader, Jared, is rumored to be so powerful that even the Imperial Army wouldn't dare lay a finger on him.
Zayn listened intently but didn't show much concern.
As for the Colby family, I don't know much about them except that they're a reclusive martial arts family. No one seems to know how rich or powerful they are. What I do know is that all the most important sects and families are bringing their disciples here to participate in this test, and they know much more than we do.
He looked around at the crowd to see if he recognized anyone.
Look over there, that's Seamus.
He pointed to a strange-looking young man.
His parents are from the royal families of the Yarrow and Lyran kingdoms.
Zayn followed Barnabas's gaze and saw the man in question. Seamus was dressed in a purple and gold robe with a dragon and snake emblem embroidered on it. He was surrounded by several beautiful young women. Despite his self-important air, Zayn remained unfazed.
And that's Penelope, the daughter of Princess Maya and the Southern King,
Barnabas told him, pointing to a charming-looking lady with delicate facial features. Barnabas pointed out another important-looking man.
Judging by his clothes, I'm guessing he's a master of meditation from the Peace Temple.
He continued to point out the other participants to Zayn, explaining who they were, and he seemed to know almost everyone there. Some of them had impressive connections, but Zayn knew it didn't matter where he came from. He was determined to rely on his own skills and talent to get accepted into the Five Spirits Sect. A bell rang, and 3 people from the Five Spirits Sect walked out and scanned the bustling crowd.
Those uniforms they're wearing are from the White Wolf Academy.
Barnabas whispered, referring to their white clothing. He sounded rather excited as he gazed up at them.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Vaniel.
One of the men announced, silencing the crowd.
I'm the president of the Hall of Foreign Affairs in the Five Spirits Sect, and I'm in charge of this test, which will begin shortly. Please wait in front of the gate until we call your name.
Vaniel was a powerful man whose cultivation was at the 2nd stage of the foundation level. He made a sudden sweeping gesture with his hand, and a ray of light burst out of his large ring. To everyone's surprise, a giant black rock appeared in front of him. A series of symbols that resembled insects flickered across its surface.
This is called the Energy Sealing Rock. It's extremely heavy, and it can stop the vital energy in your body from circulating. The first part of the test is about strength. As long as you can push the rock 10 yards away from you, then you may follow the stairs up to the next part of the test.
As he pointed to a staircase behind him, a bald, bare-chested man suddenly jumped out from the crowd and confidently walked up to the rock.
Let me try.
Without waiting for permission, he activated his blood energy and began building up his strength. Then he clenched his fist and punched the rock. Huge waves of power flowed from his arm and spread to the rock, and it moved about 3 yards and then stopped. His jaw dropped, and he reluctantly turned to Vaniel, embarrassed that the rock hadn't moved any farther. He begged to Vaniel.
Please give me another chance.
But Vaniel didn't even look at him. He simply shooed him away.
Next!
The bald man didn't want to believe that he had blown his chance. He took a deep breath, placed his hands on it, and pushed with all his might.
4 yards. Fail. Next.
As each hopeful made their attempt, Vaniel ruthlessly announced the results, and after more than 100 attempts, not a single person had succeeded in moving the rock 10 yards. Just as everyone was beginning to think it was impossible, a voice called out,
"Let me show you all how it's done!"
The man Barnabas had referred to as Seamus took a step forward, rubbing his palms together. Not a trace of vital energy was circulating throughout his body.
Can no one here even handle a simple energy sealing rock?
Seamus asked, raising an eyebrow. With that, he stretched out his hand, and with a simple push, the rock moved until it stopped at the 12-yard line. Everyone cheered, glad to finally have proof that it was possible to move on to the next stage.
Not bad.
Vaniel shrugged, clearly unimpressed.
You've passed the first stage. Next!
The other hopefuls watched as Seamus proudly marched up the stairs.
Penelope, please come forward.
With a glance at Elena, Penelope took a step toward the rock, and then she threw a punch. To her great delight, the rock rolled just over 10 yards.
Pass!
Vaniel shouted in the same indifferent tone as before. Then he looked up, showing the first sign of interest since the test had begun. As Elena made her way toward the rock, it was impossible not to notice how elegant she was, and even Vaniel seemed enchanted by her. Elena could hear people whispering as she walked by. Most people seemed more interested in her looks than her talent, but she wasn't the least bit unnerved by it. At least some members of the crowd were talking about her skill, and that gave her a boost of confidence.
Rumor has it that she's been cultivating since she was born. She's incredibly talented.
Whenever you're ready.
Vaniel told her, gesturing to the rock. Elena lifted her hand and punched the rock. Although she hadn't seemed to make much effort, the rock rolled even faster than anyone had seen until then.
17 yards. Amazing.
Everyone was stunned, and many people gasped in surprise. Vaniel chuckled.
Well, I think we know who will be making it into the Five Spirits Sect. Congratulations in advance, Elena.
Elena ignored both the envious stares from the crowd and Vaniel's flattery. She acknowledged everyone with an indifferent nod before ascending the stairs. Barnabas felt inspired, so he was eager to go next.
I've got to give it a shot. Zayn, I can't wait any longer.
Taking a deep breath, he tried to stay calm as he walked up to the rock. He looked at Vaniel.
I'm Barnabas from Meadow City. If you don't mind, I'd like to go next. Sir?
Vaniel wasn't at all impressed. Barnabas looked just like the hundreds of others who had gone before him, but Vaniel agreed to let him try his hand at pushing the rock. Barnabas stepped forward, closing his eyes to relax his nerves. When he opened his eyes again, the blood energy in his body began to build up, and he crossed his arms to build up the force within him. When the force burst out of him, it injected itself into the rock. As the rock began to move, it emitted a low rumbling sound, and it kept on rolling until it stopped at exactly 10 yards. Barnabas's eyes lit up at the sight of his triumph, and excitement welled up within him. He looked back at Zayn, grinning from ear to ear.
I'll wait for you at the next checkpoint, Zayn.
Zayn smiled and nodded, but his smile slowly faded once Barnabas had gone up the stairs and out of sight. The energy-sealing rock could suppress his vital energy, and he knew that meant he was at a disadvantage. While others were able to use techniques that didn't require vital energy, he was going to have to rely on his physical strength. He had been focused on practicing the heavenly sword technique and the devouring dragon technique, but they weren't going to help him much without the use of his vital energy. Some people had special energy circulation or extraordinary strength that didn't require vital energy, which made the task of moving the rock a piece of cake. Unfortunately for Zayn, he hadn't cultivated such techniques, so he didn't know what to do. His mind raced, trying to think of a plan, but then his name was called, and he was out of time.
Zayn Martell from Kintyre County, please step forward.
Zayn steeled himself, and with a determined look on his face, he took a confident step forward. He felt a cooling sensation when he placed his palm on the rock, and he could sense his vital energy being firmly suppressed by an unyielding force. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't do anything. His only hope was that his dragon spirit body would be able to manifest itself, so he took a deep breath and focused on his energy center. Every inch of his body tensed up, and he could feel his blood heating. As he clenched his fists, blue veins snaked up his arms, and with a roar, he punched the rock with all his might. Shockwaves battered the rock, and it began to roll. Zayn held his breath as he watched it slowly make its way to the 10-yard line. It was only the minimum needed, but he was still excited. As he approached the stairs, his heart pounded and his face was flushed. Even though Vaniel didn't look at him, Zayn still nodded politely, and then he climbed up the steps. As he made his way up, a deafening sound rang out below him, and he nearly lost his footing. When he turned around to see what was going on, he saw that Kurt Colby had just sent the rock flying 20 yards away, leaving it embedded in the steps. The crowd stood in awe. They wondered who Kurt was and what cultivation method he had used. He had managed to throw the energy-sealing rock 20 yards away with one punch, and such a thing was unheard of. Even Vaniel was impressed, and he showed a hint of emotion for only the second time that day. Kurt was pleased with himself as he walked up the stairs with a self-assured swagger. He smirked when he saw Zayn halfway up, but Zayn was unfazed by Kurt overtaking him. He was impressed by Kurt's feat, and he sighed as he thought about what it would have taken to move the rock like that. Zayn thought to himself,
If Kurt solely relied on physical strength, he must be formidable.
Zayn walked up the spiral staircase step by step. Lush green plants lined the railings on both sides, and a strong and refreshing wave of vital energy pervaded the air around him. At the top of the staircase was a glowing gate, adorned with runes. It was guarded by a uniformed outer disciple of the White Wolf Academy, and the hopefuls who had passed the first checkpoint were gathered in front of him. A tall, white marble monument stood there, but Zayn was unable to make out the few characters inscribed on it. As a young man stood before it, the monument began to glow, and the illusion of a towering tree appeared, followed by more and more trees until it became a dense forest. Streams of vital energy descended from the sky, forming a vortex that made its way toward the first towering tree. 3 dim stars could be seen just above it, and everyone looked up at them with wonder.
A 3-star talent.
The White Wolf Academy disciple remarked emotionlessly to the man standing next to him.
You can move to the next level.
Zayn recognized the test right away. Barnabas had mentioned it, and Eris had also told him about it, but no matter how hard Zayn had practiced, he hadn't been able to get even 1 star to light up. He also hadn't managed to summon his dragon spirit body on command. He was lost in thought when he heard a familiar voice deliver a mocking taunt.
You may have passed the first hurdle, but you'll never pass this test. You don't have the talent to get into the 5 Spirits Sect.
When Zayn looked up, he met the eyes of Prince Jorah, who was wearing a White Wolf Academy uniform. When he saw the divine beast's insignia, he couldn't believe his eyes. He had never imagined that Prince Jorah was an inner disciple of the White Wolf Academy. Zayn's heart sank as he looked at Prince Jorah.
What are you doing here? Weren't you supposed to be at the Azure Dragon Academy? Are you really a member of the White Wolf Academy?
Before he had left Kintyre County, Eris had said very clearly that he would take Prince Jorah to the Azure Dragon Academy, so Zayn wondered what had happened since then. He assumed both Eris and Elora were still there, as he hadn't seen any sign of them. As he thought about it, another man in the White Wolf Academy robe stepped up to him.
Prince Jorah's talents would be wasted at the Azure Dragon Academy. You must be Zayn. I've heard about you, and it seems Prince Jorah was right. You're not very strong. You may as well just give up and go home now, because you're never going to make it into the 5 Spirits Sect. Staying here is just a waste of time.
The man was Prince Jorah's sidekick, Niran. He had a face that resembled a horse and teeth that were too big for his mouth. Zayn wasn't intimidated by him, but he didn't waste his time on a reply. He just looked back at Prince Jorah and scowled.
I can help you get through this, as long as you're willing to give me the Heavenly Sword technique and serve me while you're here. After all, it's the only way you'll have a chance of making it into the 5 Spirits Sect.
Give away the Heavenly Sword technique? Not a chance.
He was more certain than ever that there was a valuable secret hidden within the Heavenly Sword technique, and he intended to find out what it was. Besides, he would never lower himself to become Prince Jorah's servant. He was intent on becoming a top martial artist and making it into the 5 Spirits Sect on his own.
I'd rather fail than give away my technique, but I'm going to pass, and I'll do it without your help.
When he realized that he couldn't persuade Zayn, Prince Jorah grew irritated.
Well, since you've made your stance clear, let me give you a warning. As an inner disciple of the White Wolf Academy, I can kill you at any time with the wave of my hand. But before I do so, I'm going to make your life a living hell.
Zayn ignored him and walked toward the second checkpoint. Prince Jorah was infuriated that Zayn hadn't acknowledged his threat, and he turned to address Niran.
I might need your help later.
Anything you need, Your Highness.
Niran replied, happy to be of service. Prince Jorah nodded.
First, let's watch him fail the test. Then you can take care of him.
If he does get accepted into the 5 Spirits Sect, I have plenty of ways to make him back down. I can deal with him without anyone else knowing. Discretion is my specialty.
Good.
Prince Jorah replied as he watched Zayn join the other hopefuls under the white marble monument. Everyone took turns placing their hands on the monument to channel their vital energy. With each one, a different image appeared. Some people found the images upsetting, while others found them inspiring.
Barnabas, you're next.
Barnabas was nervous as he put his hand on the monument. For a moment, nothing happened, and then the 3 dim stars slowly flickered and then grew dimmer again.
A 3-star talent, no spirit body. An acceptable pass. Next.
Barnabas was extremely excited to find out he had passed and would be going on to the next stage.
That wasn't difficult at all. Zayn, as long as your talent is above 3 stars, you'll be able to pass. If you have a spirit body, you may even get extra points.
As the others chatted excitedly amongst themselves, Zayn worried about the test, but then he was interrupted by Barnabas tapping him on the shoulder and pointing at something.
Look! It's Elena from the Divination Pavilion!
Zayn looked over and saw Elena approaching the monument, a green ray of light swirling around her. Everyone could see that there was something special about her, and they all had different theories. With a flick of her finger, the vital energy swirling around Elena flowed into the monument like water. The monument was suddenly enveloped in a blue flame so intense it looked like it might explode, and the crackling sound of fire intensified. Suddenly, a blood-curdling screech filled the air, and an enormous bluebird emerged from the flames. It looked as though it were made of fire itself, and its otherworldly appearance terrified the onlookers. Above the bird, 6 stars of different colors appeared in the sky.
A 6-star talent. I've never seen anything like it. This is a once-in-a-century occurrence?
Everyone was astonished at both Elena's talent and the terrifying bird in front of them. Standing on the outskirts of the crowd, Niran nudged Prince Jorah. He was busy looking enviously at the spectacle before him, so he didn't notice Prince Jorah's sinister look. Prince Jorah tried to pretend he didn't care, but he couldn't hide his disdain. As they looked on, a loud explosion rang out with a burst of flames. When the smoke cleared, they could see a woman floating in the air, her clothes fluttering in the wind. The waves of vital energy emanating from her body distorted her surroundings, and her majestic aura made the air feel heavy and oppressive. She glanced down, fixing her gaze on Elena with a delighted expression. When she spoke, it was in hushed tones, but her voice was captivating.
I'm Madame Halloway, Dean of the Fire Scorpion Academy. If I'm not mistaken, you have the Emerald Pheasant spirit body. We extend an invitation for you to become our disciple. Accept, and no further tests shall be required from this moment.
The crowd erupted in an uproar, voicing their astonishment at witnessing such a spectacle.
She must be at the intermediate level. I've never seen anyone like that before. Everyone back home is going to be so jealous.
Elena was overwhelmed with joy, and she didn't hesitate to accept Madame Halloway's offer. Madame Halloway clapped her hands together.
Then let's not waste any more time. Follow me.
Without saying a word to the moderator, Madame Halloway raised her hand and unleashed a blast of bright flames that engulfed Elena. Moments later, they transformed into an arc of light and the two of them disappeared.